Well, welcome and good morning to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly show where I bring you news, views, and some tips about riding generally. So, it's what is it today? Wednesday, the 17th of April, so middle of the final, middle of spring, really. It's show number 421, and what have I got for you in today's show? Well, quite a lot to talk about. Again, the Gigavolt factory scheme in Northumberland has finally run flat. We'll talk about that very briefly. Sadly, a police chase around the M25 ended up with the death of a motorcyclist in a collision in Essex. Another collision between a car and a KTM motorcycle sadly killed a 5-year-old sitting in the back seat, showing that passengers in cars are vulnerable in motorcycle collisions. Meanwhile, a 57-year-old female rider has pleaded guilty to dangerous driving after an overtaking crash that went badly wrong. Devon Cornwall police have taken on board their bike simulator. It's arrived 10 months after I told you about the fact they were ordering one. Bikes in bus lanes, that consultation is underway and has so far got 11,000 responses, so that's good news. First quarter bike registrations, they're holding up well, but Raptee is rolling out yet another Indian-built electric motorcycle. No news on anything else this week. And then back to the simulator. Why don't we make more use of them in bike training? That's the question I'm going to look at in depth at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. That'll be about 20 minutes or so away as I go through the news. All right, okay, so don't forget, if you have a question, anything you want to comment on, ask away, and I will do my very best to answer it during the show if I possibly can. If I can't, I will get back to you after the show, although that may be delayed today as I'm off down to Devon, sadly, for another funeral. All right, okay, so let's crack on. First of all, I just want to bring you the weather and what's going on out there for motorcyclists. Well, it's a sort of bit of a mixed bag again. The control of the weather is down to an area of high pressure which is circling around the UK, and the fact it's clockwise is what matters because it's bringing in cold air from the far north. So today, tomorrow and Friday, the high will be sat out to the west of Ireland, and that's bringing those northerly winds over the country. For the following weekend, it looks like the high will probably shift up directly over the UK, and that will mean a noticeable increase in temperatures. It'll be mild rather than warm, but it will bring up warmer air from the south. So today the winds dropped over the last couple of days, thank heavens. It was very windy out training yesterday. Temperatures remain in single figures in the north to low teens in the south. Cloud and rain will spread from Northern Ireland and Northwest Wales into the far southwest by late afternoon. Elsewhere, patchy cloud will bring a few showers later in the day, so it doesn't look too bad for most of us. Thursday will be a cold start. There could even be frost in a few places, and whilst the Midlands and the south stay mostly dry, cloud and rain will sweep across Scotland and the north of England. It'll be just a degree or so warmer. By Friday morning, the remains of the rain should be clearing the east coast, and the rest of the UK will actually experience a dry and a somewhat brighter weather, and temperatures may reach the mid-teens in sheltered areas in the south, but it will be cooler along east-facing coasts. And Saturday and Sunday begin to look warmer and sunnier across most of England, but there will be some rain and cloud around likely in the far north, so do check your local forecasts to find out exactly what is going on. Right, okay. One other thing I just meant to mention, I don't use LinkedIn as much as possibly I should do, but whilst discussing the Fortnite body protector debate on my Buddy Mouse profile, I got a message from Glenn MacArthur. Now, he's a presenter on the National Bike Safe team, and he said, "Hi Kevin, I've been signposting riders to your research on the science of being seen for years now. I worked with Kent Fire and Rescue and started Biker Down here in Sussex. Your research and findings made very interesting reading. I still reference your work during the workshops that I deliver as part of the National Bike Safe team. And yeah, frankly, that was great to hear. Even though I'm not associated with Kent Fire and Rescue Service or Bike Safe anymore, my time with them was terminated rather abruptly in 2021, which I think is a bit of a pity. As you probably know, the website does get updated when I find an interesting new paper. So as well as my online presentations, I do travel out and about delivering Science of Being Seen to anyone who wants to hear the message. And I actually delivered the talk to the Mets team here in London. I think it was 2020. I was going to dig out a photograph of that, but I ran out of time. Now, in the next sort of 10 weeks or so, I have talks set up with the IAM groups in Devon and in Cornwall in the diary. I would be right out in the far reaches of the southwest. Unfortunately, I can't tie it in with my trip out there later this afternoon. Also, I'm heading up to Cambridge area for a talk with the ROSPA group up there. So if any of you want a talk from the horse's mouth, if any of you are organised, with a club or a group, or the IAM, a local team, or ROSPA, or anything else, let me know, and I will come and happily deliver the presentation. I'll even come and do it for bike safe teams if you really want me to. Right, so okay, I've done the weather, haven't I? So it's literally on with the news. So what have we got for you today? Well, the first story, pretty short one. It just sums up basically the chaos and confusion over the plan to build the £3.8 billion electric battery Gigavolt gigafactory at Blythe in Northumberland. The plan's officially dead. Australian firm Recharge Industries, they took control of British startup after British startup went into administration last year, and now Recharge have themselves been handed a winding up petition. So their plan to develop the site for this factory is a non-starter. So the official receivers for British Volt Properties, who own the site, they revealed that they'd entered into a contract to sell it off to a subsidiary of a US investment giant called Blackstone, and they have a new scheme, and they want to turn it into a 235-acre data collection facility, which would make it one of the very largest in Western Europe. Now, Northumberland City Council, or County Council rather, they will be assessing the plans, and if they believe that they have a chance of succeeding and they approve them, building work could begin in the new year, which pretty much brings us back to where we were 2020 when Boris Johnson proudly presented this as a shining pinnacle of British industry. Anyway, politics aside, on with some sadder news. Two teenagers have been arrested, and Kent Police have referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct following the death of a motorcyclist on Sunday. That was April the 14th on the M25. The emergency services, they were called to junction 30 of the motorway, that's up in Essex, just north of the Dartford Tunnel, at about 11:40 in response to a collision involving a Range Rover and a motorcycle. Now, unfortunately, despite the best effort of the paramedics, the motorcyclist died at the scene. Prior to the collision, the Range Rover had been involved in a pursuit involving Kent Police. The two teenagers, both aged 18 and from Essex, were arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving at the scene. And Essex Police, whose turf obviously the collision happened on, are now appealing for witnesses and dashcam footage of the incident. And sadly, in another incident in Oxfordshire, a collision between a Ford Focus car and a KTM motorcycle at a junction near Bicester has resulted in the death of a 5-year-old boy who was travelling as a rear seat passenger in the car. The rider, a man in his 40s, was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The driver, a woman in her 30s, and a 9-year-old boy were also treated in hospital for what were described as less serious injuries. This crash happened around 2 p.m. on Sunday, and Thames Valley Police are also appealing for witnesses and dashcam footage. Right, okay, don't forget, Kevin's here, and he says, Glenn, decent guy. Oh, you know him, right, okay, good. Don't forget, I was going to say, yes, if you are enjoying the show, they go out Wednesdays, today, and they go out Sundays, at 11. They're normally live. Occasionally they get a recorded show, and very rarely I miss one altogether, and I might have to reschedule one if I have other things going on. But that's the normal time to find them, and the easiest place to actually catch up if you do miss a show and you want to find out something, then head for my YouTube channel, which is Survival Skills UK. Don't forget that all important UK on the end, or you won't find my channel. If you can hear some banging and clunking in the background, by the way, it's because we're having some building work being done in the bathroom, which is next door. Right, so another collision story. Sadly, at least this one didn't kill anybody, but a motorcycle rider collided with a van after a dangerous overtaking manoeuvre on the A696 in Northumberland last October has appeared at Newcastle Magistrates Court facing a charge of dangerous driving. The 57-year-old rider from South Tyneside was riding through Northumberland at around 3 p.m. in October last year when the crash happened. What's unusual about this is that the rider of the Honda involved was female. Most serious crashes involve men. Now, unfortunately, the circumstances, though, sound all too familiar, as the court heard that Julie Elliott was overtaking vehicles over double white lines as she was approaching a bend. That's something I see far too many riders doing, frankly. It's not just the legality of the issue, it's the fact that the white lines are there to ensure that you don't end up on the wrong side of the road as something comes around the corner, and this is what it appears to have happened. The report's not entirely clear, but I'm guessing that the van appeared around the corner, since witnesses said that Elliot attempted to brake hard enough to lift the rear wheel, in fact, and the driver of the van said he knew the motorcycle was going to hit the van, so he dropped his speed and steered into a verge. The impact caused airbags to be deployed. There were 2 children in the van. Fortunately, everybody in the van was unharmed but shocked. Elliot, unfortunately, though, was left with serious injuries, including a fractured pelvis. Now, her defence counsel accepted that Elliot had carried out a dangerous manoeuvre, but said she'd been a motorcycle rider for many years without any accidents. He said it was a momentary lapse of judgment. Elliot, who had no previous convictions, pleaded guilty to a charge of dangerous driving, and she's been given an interim driving ban until her next court appearance next month, when she'll be sentenced. Now, in an attempt to eliminate some of these more unfortunate crashes, Devon Cornwall police have taken delivery of the motorcycle simulator. Now, I did talk about this story 10 months ago. They aim to help tackle bike crashes in the area with the simulator. It's going to go on tour, and their particular goal is to engage with young and inexperienced riders in a bid to reduce their toll on the roads. Now, it's the first of its kind in the UK, and it will be used to pilot a national initiative, which is to test the effectiveness of simulated hazard awareness training and its impact on the reduction of these serious and fatal collisions. So the simulator is going to go to large-scale public events throughout the summer, such as the Bideford Motorcycle Show, the Mega Ride Festival, the Devon County Show, the Royal Cornwall Show, Torbay Air Festival, and the Plymouth Armed Forces Day. And it will also turn up, they believe, at F1, MotoGP and British Superbike events. Natalie Waugh, she's the partnership manager for Vision Zero Southwest, said, "We know additional training is an effective way of improving road user skills and awareness, which is why the partnership was so keen to back this exciting project." I'll be coming back to that story when we get to the end of the show. Right, okay, on to bus lanes. Now, government proposals on whether or not bus lanes should be allowed to use bus lanes by default. This would mean that councils have to apply for an order not to allow bus lanes to be used by motorcycles and scooters, rather than the other way around, where motorcyclists and groups have to make a special case for access to a particular lane. This has received over 11,000 responses in the first month of this consultation, which forms part of the government's plan for drivers. Now, Not too surprisingly, the DFT says there's been stronger enthusiasm from motorcycle users on the proposal, with many welcoming what it says is the long overdue consideration of the needs of motorcyclists. Roads Minister Guy Opperman, can't keep up with the road ministers, every time I look we've got a new one. He said, our plan for drivers is not just improving journeys for car users, but also motorcyclists who have sometimes been overlooked. You should, Coco. We're getting on and delivering our plan to make life for drivers and motorbike riders alike better, fairer and cheaper, and I'm glad the consultation has already seen such a significant response. So following the conclusion of the consultation, which is June the 9th, so you still have plenty of time to make your own submission and get those numbers up even higher, the DFT will use responses to consider whether to take forward this policy change. So that's great news, just as long, of course, as we still have somewhere to park our bikes when we get into town centres, which local councils seem to be doing their best to make difficult for us right now. Now, motorcycle sales. Despite the bad weather, despite the gloom over surging inflation, the first quarter's motorcycle registrations have held up surprisingly well. Year-to-date registrations, so that was basically to the end of last month, they are down just 0.2% against the same period last year, with around 28,000 bikes registered according to the Motorcycle Industry Association, MCIA, data. Not too surprisingly, the latest iteration of BMW's Big GS range has returned to the top of the charts for 591 bikes being registered so far, with 431 sold this last month, March. Yamaha's 125cc NMAX scooter, that's still the second most popular bike. That registered 415 registrations. That was in March, and not surprisingly, given the strong interest in the new Triumph singles, I quite like the look of those myself, actually. I wouldn't mind giving one a spin. The Speed 400 and Scrambler 400 have topped the modern classic category, though at least some of the bikes registered will have been demonstrators, so not all would have gone out to owners. Honda's once again on top as the biggest manufacturer, 1,333 registrations in the first quarter, and they are more than double the sales of Yamaha's 300. Oh, I'm getting my numbers all muddled again. 631. That gets them into second place. Now, after all the serious crash stories, we'll come to something a little bit more light-hearted, which I would like to put in front of you. I'm just going to give you the Twitter link. So this crash didn't hurt anyone, and it had an amusing twist. Now, it happened in the Moto3 race at the Circuit of the Americas, when Ivan Ortola and Stefano Neppa got tangled mid-corner, and they both crashed. Now, Neppa actually got caught up with Ortola's bike as they slid to a stop. But having picked himself up, Ortola himself, he ran straight to the MTA level-up bike. Unfortunately, that happened to be the machine that was being ridden by Neppa. As he climbed on and tried to restart it, Neppa got to his feet, rushed over and prevented him from riding away on it, and so they swapped bikes. So it turned out that what had happened was the 19-year-old Ortola had forgotten that he had switched to a new team for this season, was riding the MT Helmets MSI motorcycle, so obviously it was his old bike. So he had to run back to his old machine, or his new machine rather. The marshals had now righted it, so both riders did restart. They both rejoined the race, but unfortunately Neppa was out at the points in 18th and Ortola crashed out again. I would love to play the video and show you it, but obviously copyright rules come into play, and I don't want to tangle with MotoGP's lawyers. I'm sure they don't watch, but anyway, you never know. So you can watch the video. It's only a few seconds long on the MotoGP feed on the platform formerly known as Twitter. Right, okay, so Kevin says, some may be increasingly concerned that the overzealous placement of solid lines may result in wider safe spread contraventions where compliance for safety is definitely needed. I've had this debate before. I can't remember if I've had it with you, Kevin. The problem is that these lines are set for the lowest common denominator, whether that is a slow moving truck or whether it is a less competent driver. Motorcycles have acceleration, they have nimbleness. Often we can get past a slower vehicle by accelerating, although that brings its own problems, including the inability to stop again when something goes wrong. So yes, I know that many riders do view double white lines as an imposition. My solution, I ride on roads where I don't have to worry about them, simple as, if I can possibly do it. Anyway, in stark contrast to the lack of interest in electric motorcycles here in the UK, and what I would say is a pretty sad commentary actually on the heritage of the motorcycle industry in this country, incidentally. It looks increasingly like India will be a dominant player in the future of e-bikes, while we cling on here to imported petrol-engined machines, and even Triumph's bikes, of course, are mostly made in Indonesia, Brazil and India, by the way, whilst they have shelved their own electric project, saying that they want to stick with petrol. So let's have a quick look at what's the latest bike. Can't tell you much about it. This is clearly a render rather than a photograph, but last Sunday, the Chennai-based Raptee Energy said that they rolled out their first production electric bike from their manufacturing plant, which they say is now in full operation. Excuse me, it's not dust around from the building work. Now, it was founded in 2019. They say as an electric alternative to the mid-premium motorcycle market, and their co-founder and CEO, one Dinesh Arjun, he announced that the plant has a capacity to make around 100,000 units, but we intend to take it slow in the beginning. He said that the first batch of motorcycles will undergo rigorous safety checks and on-road testing, and they will gain certification, and then he said we'll likely go for commercial launch within this quarter. So that presumably is sometime April to June. So the company also makes its own battery packs via a designated assembly line, and sales are said to be planned via a mix of online and conventional storefronts. And the bike's set to be priced in the £250,000 range, which according to my calculator is just over £2,400 at today's exchange rate. No word on performance or range, but given the price, my guess is it's a short-range urban commuter, which makes sense in India. Right, okay, so moving on rapidly then, it's the in-depth item at the end, and I'll be asking why we aren't making more use of simulators as I come back to the story about Devon and Cornwall Police's simulator, which they say will be used to test the effectiveness of simulated hazard awareness training and its impact on the reduction of serious and fatal collisions. Now, I first mentioned the Devon Cornwall plan to use a simulator last June. I thought I remembered it, so I took a trawl back through the archives and the old scripts to find out what I wrote back then. So what I'm about to say is sort of a bit of a mix of some of the old news, but with my latest comments. So the Force has got the support of the UK Department of Transport, and they're launching this pioneering project, which is based around a battery-powered motorcycle simulator, which will be installed in a truck, which can then be used as a mobile classroom. So that is the truck in question, and the simulator's in the back of it. Now, the rider will be able to see what they're sort of riding into via these set of screens. They say it offers a field of vision of more than 180 degrees, and the hardware is based around a real motorcycle. That's a Honda CB500X apparently underneath the rider there, and it's installed on a platform which allows the bike to give the rider a sense of motion. Now, the simulator itself is operated by custom software, and it can be used to test the rider's hazard awareness. The machine comes with authentic controls, brake, clutch, throttle and indicators. The system's said to be accurately reproducing braking and accelerating. Well, I think it's probably making a bit of a stab in that direction. I doubt it completely represents it, but anyway, but it gives you a flavour of the handling of the bike at high and low speed. It inclines on bends, and it can experience potholes and many of the other routines exclusively applicable to motorcycle. That's what I told you last time. As I told you that the rider can experience urban and interurban driving environments, which I presume they mean rural roads, including dual carriageways, motorways, where the rider has to deal with pre-programmed events such as the ordinary movement of other vehicles. Now, the software can also be interactively programmed, so that means that the whoever's working with the rider can bring in real sort of hazards in real time, including sort of problems that a rider might encounter in filtering or perhaps encountering deer or tractors in rural environments. And so there are a wide range of tools which can create real life scenarios to see how the rider copes. And the system also records and plays back, and you get a chase view if you want it, which basically allows you to see the bike in context with other traffic. And it's good enough, apparently, that Devon Cornwall believe they can use it to train their own police motorcyclists. But once again, I kind of come back to the question of, is this really what's needed? Now, it's a reasonable assumption that simulators can be used to train riders. They're extensively used in the airline industry. But there are many differences. First of all, extensive training is required to learn how to fly an aeroplane via a simulator. You don't get in it for 10 minutes and have a quick spin and suddenly fly off in a sort of a A380 or something. And the question is, can one rather costly unit actually be used in such a way as to provide useful insights that will really make impact to the wider riding population? Or will it become a white elephant that rarely gets an outing but costs a lot of money? Now, even if every force in the country had one, there's no way they could be used to provide meaningful training, even if you restricted the target audience to those younger riders. As I said 10 months ago, if training schools that are at the sharp end of rider training, there's absolutely no way that the hundreds of independent riding schools here in the country could front up the cost of a simulator like this. It would be just as relevant for car driving too, and one-man band driving instructors would have even less chance of getting hold of one. So the question is, why do we have to have such a high cost project? The fact is, great though it looks, I really don't think we need this sort of full immersive riding experience. It's amazing how engrossed we can get in a simple computer game on a phone, for heaven's sake. We don't need a mechanical rocking horse heaving away underneath us. So rather than this one-off project that hardly any riders will really get to experience, I think it's the training schools that need access to inexpensive simulators for hazard perception and awareness training. And let me show you a blast from the past. Let me just get that picture up on screen. There it is. This was built by Honda. I can't remember how long ago this simple simulator was actually put together by Honda. As you can see, it's based around a single screen and a desktop PC in a box down there, big old-fashioned one. I think it was a couple of £1,000 if I remember right. It was a moderate amount of money in those days, but it was affordable. And I think, if I remember correctly, around £800 of that was actually for the box. Now, we could pretty easily improve on that today with a modestly spec'd PC and 3 biggish screens to give us sort of a 180 degree, 120 degree views probably enough. You really don't need to be 180 unless you want to throw shoulder checks into the mix. Plus you probably need a pair of these. Now these are the Thrustmaster bars. They were available around 10 years ago. I didn't actually manage to spec a price on those, but they basically give you the core functions of a motorcycle on the handlebars. Yeah, you don't get all the rocking and heaving that you'll get with a full-on simulator, but as I say, do you need it? You could probably put the basics together for a few £100 particularly if you used a bit of judicious pre-loved purchasing. I've got a fairly modest, fairly reasonably powered computer here in front of me, which I bought for peanuts online, and it was an old office PC, so pretty highly spec'd, just a couple of years old. Anyway, I'll say it and I'll say it again. I think the benefits of a simple simulator are hugely underrated, and I say that, in fact, there's a research project out there for some one in the field of research, to go out there and compare the effect of 1 hour on a 50k machine compared with 1 hour using something like the Honda simulator that I showed you a moment ago. Yeah, that thing there. So the sticking point is, and always has been, that decent software to create the virtual world is, unless I'm missing something, nowhere to be found. At least nothing with the sort of fidelity of the MotoGP game, which would be really quite immersive. The software for a road-based session is almost non-existent. Not totally non-existent, because this is a piece of software. I'll just zoom in on that, which I have owned for, well, I'm guessing about 2010 I bought it, so it's almost 15 years ago. Might even be older, as the bike featured in the screenshot there is actually a naked Hornet 600. Now with it, you can pilot the bike round a relatively simple set of roads. You can interact as you ride it with various hazards, as well as the on-bike view. You also get a chase view. You can see the bike from different angles as it negotiates problems. So you can get a broader perspective, and presumably with this, well, I know for a fact with a screen capture program running, you can review the results of riding it too. I had ideas to actually use it to offer some virtual training myself, but the biggest issue when I tested it actually turned out to be riding the simulated machine. It's a struggle to actually keep the bike in lane, and that's where it really falls down, because you end up focusing on the mechanics of riding rather than gaining insight into how hazardous situations develop. And this is what I worry. One of the things I worry about with that big £50,000 simulator. It's got all the controls, but do you actually need them if what you're trying to do is expose trainees to potentially difficult riding situations which they will not experience in basic training, like having to take evasive action when a vehicle pulls out? You end up focusing on the mechanics of riding if you provide lots of controls rather than gaining insight into the riding situations themselves. You know, if all it really needs to be is twist and go. Anyway, I'll be interested to see how this experiment pans out. My first fear, as I say, is that since it's going to be used for engagement, that's the term the police have used, it won't be used for proper training sessions. It will be a quick ride, which, you know, ends up perhaps with the game like sort of score at the end. How many hazards did you spot? How many did you miss? Kind of thing. How quickly did you kill yourself? Did you make the entire sort of 5 minutes of the ride, or did you die at 1 minute 21? I don't know. I'll be interested to hear. My second fear, as I say, is that the complexity of the clutch, gears and everything else will be too much for a short session. And in any case, that's the bit of riding that should be left to basic training schools, because that's what they do best, is teach people how to control a machine before they let them loose on the road. And my third worry, you probably can guess this one for yourself really, I suspect that most of the people showing an interest will actually be, like the attendees on the biker down courses, which I used to do, the wrong side of 40 or 50. I can see all the green badge holders, for example, turning out to find out what it's all about. I can't say I'm not tempted to have a crack on it myself. Anyway, next time out I'll be looking at the role that VR can play. So there we go. That's simulators, police from Devon and Cornwall. What we could probably knock up in the kitchen if we put 5 minutes to it, and what we can do with them. I'd be interested to hear your comments as well. So, you know, if you've listened through this section, drop me a line. What do you think about simulators? What do you think about the Devon and Cornwall initiative? What do you think about using something that's all singing or dancing? And what do you think that your experience would be on a much cheaper simulator like the Honda one? So that's it. Time to wrap up today's show. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, as usual, please try to like, subscribe to the show. Most people don't bother, unfortunately, but every little click, as they say, helps. And don't forget, you can follow the channels as well wherever you are, Facebook or YouTube. And don't forget, there are my short videos on YouTube, 60-second safety, 60-second science, all offering useful information, but in a quick to watch, easy to digest format, so you don't spend half your life watching a long video. That's it for today. See you next show, and if you are out there on your bikes over the next few days, do stay shiny side up.